All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pink and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er recap of Thursday's happenings down here in Santa Clara. As you can see, kind of an overcast afternoon down here in Santa Clara. 49ers are back on the practice field. Let's just recap the entire day down here. First of all, maybe most importantly, Trent Williams was back at practice. He's got an ankle sprain. They said it was more involved. The question was, I think most people expected him to play against Jacksonville. But then when he didn't practice on Monday, people didn't know if he was going to be here or not. Then, is he going to practice, on Wednesday or Thursday? Today was the key day. He had to practice by today, you would think, to play. And he did practice. And he was back there practicing. So I expect Trent Williams is probably going to go against the Jaguars on Sunday. That would be my guess. We'll probably find out a little bit more details tomorrow. Now, today was also a big day from the standpoint we got a chance to talk to Steve Wilks. And, Steve Wilks, just to sum up what Steve Wilks said, he said, hey, look, the bye week came at a perfect time. The guys looked mentally and physically recharged. He said he saw a difference in kind of how they looked as far as their overall speed. Then he talked a little bit about Jacksonville, and he said how Jacksonville is a well-coached team, that Travis Etienne is a 3-down running back. He's got power, he's got speed, he's got receiving ability. Really talked up the tight end. Loves Evan Ingram. Said he was phenomenal. They use him out of the slot. They use him flexed out. They'll put him on the line of scrimmage, but he's very fast. Christian Kirk, he says, that Kirk is playing at a high level, and he's revitalized his whole career under Doug Peterson. Really talked glowingly about Trevor Lawrence and how he protects the football, how Jacksonville stays balanced offensively, run pass, and how Lawrence is getting the ball out quickly. Steve seemed to think that it was a good week of practice. When he was asked about the key to victory, he was like, hey, man, we got to execute. And, basically he said, hey, we need to get it done up front against the run. He said that fatigue is definitely sets in after a number of weeks, and he noticed that fatigue against the Bengals. Then he was asked specifically about his move from the box to the field, and, he downplayed it. He said it's not a big deal. He says, then he went on to say that he wants to be able to communicate with his players during game for in-game adjustments and, that direct dialogue face-to-face and being able to communicate directly. And then he was asked, is it just the DBs? Or he's like, no, it's really guys on all three levels of the defense. He wants to be able to communicate with them directly during the game. He said you can't dwell on the past 3 weeks. He says, hey, we need to refocus, take it one game at a time. Then he kind of, in a very accountable way says, I have to do a better job. And he really said the key is third downs. He says, we got to do a better job of getting off the field. He was asked about how he handles the criticism, and he said, hey, man, I'm built for this. It's like, he's like, there's things that you hear and then things that you listen to. And in other words, you hear all the noise, but you don't actually listen to it. And he just, emphasized that the Niners need to turn it around, that he tries not to be emotional. Then he went on to say, hey, man, I can take it. I've got a lot of self-confidence. He finished up by talking a little bit about Chase Young and just said that he fits the Niner culture and that he gets the sense from Chase that Chase is fired up to be on a good team. So that was Steve Wilks. Then we heard from Chris Forster, and Forster talked about how, Feliciano is going to start for Banks at left guard because of Banks' turf toe. When he was asked about, do you expect Trent Williams to be back, he's like, no comment. The coaches, that's like a point of emphasis. They don't want coaches commenting on injuries. Then he talked about Burford and McKivitz and his evaluation of the right side of his line, and he thinks that they've gotten better each and every week and that it hasn't quite shown up on film. He was asked about, the run game and why the run game hasn't gone, and he just said, hey, we're in a lot of second and longs. Penalties have hurt us. We got to do a better job. Talked about Jacksonville's defensive line. He says they play a great team defense. It's well coordinated. And then he was asked about Brock Purdy's post-game speech in the locker room to the players after the Bengal game. And he just said, hey, he said he's a great guy. He's a great leader. It was heartfelt. And then he went on to say that he really likes that Brock's accountable, as one of the leaders on the team. So that was kind of interesting. So that was Forster. Then we got a chance to talk to Brock Purdy, and Purdy came out and basically I asked him about Jacksonville's defense, and he just said, they're forcing quarterbacks to throw it into tight windows, and that things look open, but they close down really quickly. He was asked about whether or not the interceptions that he's thrown recently have made him hesitant, and he said there's a fine line between being aggressive and taking care of the ball. And he emphasized that, sometimes you got to take the check down. Sometimes you got to be a little bit more patient. And that was good to hear because that literally is the truth. And he was asked if he's pressing. He says, it's always a deal where you want to be aggressive and stay aggressive, but at the same time, be smart with the football because you're holding the football on every play. He said it was huge to have Debo and Trent coming back this week. He was asked about, how the Niners are looking at practice. And he said yesterday guys looked hungry. They were flying around at practice. And then he just kind of emphasized the Niners' reality. He says, we need a win. This game is huge for us. And he said he took last week off and that his arm feels really good. And he just lifted. He didn't do any throwing. So he says he's feeling really good. He said it was mental, kind of did a mental unplug during the bye week. He's like, it's huge to be able to step away and clear your mind. And, then he was asked about the Niners' mindset. And he said, hey, man, we just need to stay hungry. He talked about Chase Young's presence, how he's huge and how he's fit right in with the team. And then I asked him specifically what he did during the bye week. And he said, him and his fiance went out to Iowa and spent time on the farm. He went to the Iowa State homecoming game. He saw everybody. And he said just to be able to, breathe and regroup a little bit, that mentality of just being able to take a little pressure off, go back to your roots, and just being able to kind of take a deep breath. And he was asked about the message that when he spoke to the team and what he said. And he said, I've spoken to the team before, but I just wanted the guys to know that I've got to be better. And I wanted to own up to that. And he said, man, it came from the heart, and I just wanted to let them know that, I'm accountable. And that's cool. I mean, I think that's really, really cool that he cares enough about, his spot in the room and his placement on the team, that he understands that that's a big part of being the leader on this team is you got to be accountable. So, then we got a chance to go in the locker room and talk to a few guys. I went and talked to, 3 guys. First, let's start with George Kittle. Kittle talked about that, he's excited to have Chase Young. He said he eats like a different human being. He talked about how Jacksonville has 2 fantastic edge players in Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. And then he talks about how Jacksonville's secondary, they keep everything in front of them, and they're great at tackling in space. And then he was asked, why you guys struggling to run the ball? And he's like, penalties on first and second down have hurt us. He's like, eliminate the penalties, eliminate the turnovers, and then he said, run the ball down their throats. So that probably is well summed up as anything as far as the Niners' mentality offensively going into this game. Eliminate the penalties, eliminate the mistakes, eliminate the first and second down penalties, don't turn the football over, execute, and run the hell out of the football. So I think George, who's one of the great team spokesmen, kind of said it all. Then I went and talked to Tabor Pepper. Pepper's always an interesting guy as well, very interesting. He always gives you interesting answers. He admitted that, that losing that third straight game at home against the Bengals hurt a little bit going into the bye, and he just emphasized, hey, man, we need a win. He said the vibes are up. Everybody just needed a rest. They got it during the bye week. He talked about how, the Niners have been going for like 13 straight weeks, and they just need a mental and physical break after the grind they've been in. He spent the bye week out in Michigan visiting family. And I asked him about the Jaguars special teams, and he said Agnew is a tremendous return guy with speed. And then, it's funny, I asked him about Brock's post-game speech after the Bengal game, and he said nothing needed to be said by Brock. And then when I asked him about the outside noise and the criticism that, a team gets when they lose games. He's like, you listen to it all, but you hear it all, but you don't listen to any of it. And then he admitted that he reads stuff on Reddit, 49er Reddit, and he says, that's really the key. You got to hear it, but without listening to it. In other words, the criticism's there, and you're aware of it, but you don't let it overwhelm you, because that's always a possibility. And then I finished off talking to Dre Greenlaw, and Greenlaw is one of my favorite guys to talk to. He was asked about Wilks being on the sideline, and he says it's always good to have better communication. He doesn't know if it's going to make a difference, but he thinks anytime you can communicate better is a good thing. He said, you know what? This team plays well when their back's against the wall, and they feel like their backs are against the wall. Once again, another guy who kind of said the same kind of message, which is hear the criticism from the public, but don't listen to it. And then he mentioned that, they're really, even though, they've got a new coordinator, that it's the same calls as last year, that last year they did a better job of executing, and this year they just haven't executed as well. He admitted to us that he took, some shots, one for his ankle, one for his shoulder in the pregame before the Bengals game, and that it just didn't really take effect. And then he said, hey, man, no excuses. Dre doesn't like to make any excuses, but obviously he was in a lot of pain in that game. I asked him if the bye week has freshened him up at all physically, and he said, yeah, that the ankle and the shoulder are both feeling a little bit better. He said it was also a big mental break for him, just to have that mental and physical break. When we talked a little bit about Jacksonville, he said, man, they got a lot of speed at wide receiver. They're really dynamic. Talked about the running back and the wide receivers and just how dynamic that Jacksonville offense is. And then he was asked about Chase Young, the addition of Chase Young. He thinks it's a huge addition. He thinks it's going to be felt all the way through their defense. He says he adds a lot to our defense, setting the edge against the run and being a strong edge rusher off the corner. So, and then I asked him also about Brock's speech last week after the Bengal game. And, he had a really interesting answer. I'll put it out on YouTube, but he basically said, Brock didn't let the team down at all, but it was good to see him do that. It was good to see him, take the mic, go to the podium, have something to say, and, basically say, be accountable. And he said he didn't need to do it, but it was good to see. And that was kind of cool to hear him say that as well. All right, that's our update from Santa Clara here on a Thursday. The big news is Trent Williams back on the field. It looks like he's going to go on Sunday. Deebo Samuel's slated to go on Sunday as well. The Niners need a win. There's no doubt about it. They need a win. They've lost 3 in a row. They won 5 in a row. They were riding high. Now they've lost 3 in a row, and they get a really good Jacksonville team this Sunday in Jacksonville. So the message is take care of the football. Jacksonville takes the ball away as well as almost any team in the NFL. Get off of blocks up front. Play with gap integrity. Put a lot of hats on the ball. Swarm to the football. Run the ball, stop the run. In the Niners' first 4 games, I think CMC was averaging 115 yards per game on the ground. The last 4 games, he's averaged 48 rushing yards per game. So this game very much is about run the ball and stop the run and try to execute a little bit better, take care of the football, and more importantly, no matter how it looks, go to Jacksonville and get a win and get this season kind of put back on the rails. All right, that's the message from Santa Clara. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. And also, we're brought to you by Mojo Fantasy. I'm loving Mojo Fantasy. Check that link in the description and make sure you type in the promo code Krug, and you'll save on your first $100 deposit. And also, everybody who enters and puts in that promo code Krug automatically is entered into a drawing to win a Brock Purdy or a Nick Bosa jersey, which we'll give away on the postgame on Thanksgiving night. So down here in Santa Clara on a kind of a cooler day in early November with the 49ers, Larry Krueger on the Krug Show. And thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.